In this module, we'll learn different ways to work with dimensions in an analysis services project. In the current project, we have a data source and a data source view that was created in the previous module's demonstrations. We also have a cube and several dimensions that were created during those demonstrations. They've just been renamed to include a suffix called top-down to distinguish them from the bottom-up style of dimensions that we're going to be creating in this module. I've included them here so that we can compare and contrast the difference between creating the top-down versus the bottom-up approach. So let's start with a simple dimension, sales territory. Let's take a look at the top-down version. And here we can see that we have 4 attributes: country, group, region, and region source key. And these attributes were generated from the design of the attributes that we created in the previous module. So when this dimension was created using the top-down approach, each attribute that was required was defined with a data type and a specification of whether the key column and the name column were the same or different columns. Now let's see how to create this dimension using the bottom-up approach based upon the sales territory dimension that's found in the AdventureWorks DW 2008 R2 data source view. Let's take a look. We have a table that was originally called dim sales territory, as we can see here in the properties window, and we've renamed this to territory so that we have a nice short name for our dimension. Now let's create a new dimension. We'll right-click on the Dimensions folder in Solution Explorer and select the option New Dimension. And this starts a wizard. We'll just walk through this wizard step by step. So on the first page, the wizard asks us how we'd like to create the dimension. We have 4 options, and the option that's applicable for our scenario is to use an existing table. That's the bottom-up approach. If we wanted to use the top-down approach, we'd select the 4th option, generate a non-time table in the data source. We'll learn about the other 2 options related to a timetable in later demonstrations in this module. For now, we'll use an existing table. Then we need to select a data source view. We'll use AdventureWorks DW 2008 R2 here, and then we identify the main table. If we're using a snowflake dimension, the main table would be the leaf level, or the most granular table in the set of tables for the snowflake. In this case, sales territory is just a single dimension table, so we'll select territory, and then it automatically detects the key column based on the primary key indicator in the data source view. If we needed a composite key to uniquely identify each member in the dimension, we could add additional key columns by using the drop-down list. And each time we add a new key column, another row with a new drop-down list will appear. After defining the key column, we also need to specify whether there's a separate name column. The key column is used to uniquely identify each member. There will be one member per distinct row found in the source table, but the name column is what we display to the user when browsing the list of members. In this case, sales territory region would be the name column that we need to specify. And then we can see all of the remaining attributes. Here we see the attribute name sales territory key. It just takes the name of the column and inserts some spaces for each word detected based on a capitalization of the letters. And we can rename this attribute right here. This makes it very simple to do all of our work right within the wizard interface. Sales territory alternate key is the primary key found in the source system that's used to build the AdventureWorks data warehouse. Typically, we don't need to include those kinds of columns for our end user analysis. We'll select sales territory country and sales territory group. And we can go ahead and rename at this point. If we want the user to be able to put these attributes on rows or columns in a cube browser, we'll leave the option Enable Browsing selected. If we have attributes that we want to use for other purposes, for example for sorting, we would clear the checkbox. Let's click Next, and then we're ready to complete the wizard. We can change the name of the dimension at this point if we like, otherwise click Finish. And here we have our new dimension, built from the bottom up. It looks very similar to our top-down dimension. The difference here is that in our top-down dimension, we have the alternate key or source key. Now the reason we added this in the top-down approach was because we needed to add the column to the schema so that when we generated the schema, that column would appear in our source table. But once we've generated the schema, our dimension does not need to include every single column, so we could delete an attribute from that dimension. And now the top-down version looks exactly like our bottom-up version. We have country, group, and region for attributes here in the top-down version, and country, group, and region in the bottom-up version. If we want to test our results and make sure that our dimension is structured the way that we want and that we see the correct values, we need to deploy the solution and have BIDS process this dimension, which reads the underlying data source and copies values for each of our attributes into the analysis services storage. We'll learn more about exactly what happens during processing in a separate module in this course. When deployment completes successfully, we'll see a message in the Deployment Progress window confirming successful deployment. Then we can close the window and continue.